Hello, my name is Bill Simpson. This is the first of a series of video lectures for my Philosophy 101 students at Metropolitan State University at Denver. Today is Saturday, March 14th. I'm at my cabin in Russell Gulch, Colorado. Well, what I want to do this morning is talk about three things. First of all, I want to talk about the context in which the meditations on first philosophy were written. Secondly, I want to talk about doubt as a philosophical tool. And then thirdly, I want to talk about how Descartes regards the cogito argument as a guarantor of certainty, as a means for grounding an a priori inferential system. So, when we look at the meditations on first philosophy, we run into an apparently very strange array of questions. Questions like, can I really distinguish between dreaming and waking life? Is my mind being overborne by some powerful and benevolent external force that's systematically tricking me? Can the idea of God serve as the undergirding for an entire system of knowledge? Can human knowledge be systematized on absolutely certain principles? And so on and so on. Now, what are these questions in aid of? Here's what I think. Cast your mind back to our discussion of Aristotle. And one of the things we saw in Aristotle was that identity, what it is to be the same thing over time, is tied to function. So when we talk about teleology, we're talking about natural objects spelling themselves out in time with an intrinsic purpose, fulfilling internal job descriptions. And if that's the case, function is going to require normally suitable matter. Thus, for example, we don't have sledgehammers made out of bananas and axes made out of bologna. Now, if that's the case, when we look at the celestial bodies, we notice that their motion is very different than the motion of terrestrial bodies. Terrestrial bodies have rectilinear motion, celestial bodies have circular motion. And for the teleologist, that would indicate, at least at first sight, that the celestial bodies are composed of a different sort of matter than physical bodies. Okay. And so that's the position that we start with. Now, enter Galileo with the starry messenger. 1610, Galileo says, well, wait a second, I can explain planetary and terrestrial motion with the same mathematics and the same mechanics. And this brings him into conflict with the church authorities of his day. And so what I think Descartes is trying to do is spell out a philosophical system that doesn't appeal to teleology. And if you don't appeal to teleology, then you don't get sideways with the theological authorities. You as a scientist can get on with your work. And I think that's what's really behind the set of arguments that we get in Descartes' Meditations. Now remember, he's writing the Meditations in 1640. That's just 30 years after Galileo publishes the Starry Messenger and occasions all this deep personal misery for himself. So what Descartes wants to do is he wants to found a new system of human knowledge that doesn't make express appeals to Aristotelian teleology. Now, how does he do this? Well, he starts with methodological doubt. And so here's how he does it in Meditation 1, right at the beginning. He says, this is on page 17 of the Hackett edition that we're using. He says, Meditation 1, concerning those things that can be called into doubt. Several years have now passed since I first realized how numerous were the false opinions that in my youth I had taken to be true, and thus how doubtful were all those that I had subsequently built upon them. And thus I realized that once in my life I had to raze everything to the ground and begin again from original foundations if I wanted to establish anything firm and lasting in the sciences. And so the idea is cast everything into doubt. What is indubitable is a solid foundation that you can use to build up from, to build an entire philosophical system on sure and certain principles. So, Descartes asks himself, what's one thing that I can be absolutely certain about? That's the first question. And in order to answer that question, he asks himself a subsidiary question. The subsidiary question is, what's left after I exclude everything that can be doubted? So he starts looking around and he says, well, sense data. Everything up to now that I've taken to be most certain and most true, I seem to have gathered from the data supplied to me by my senses. But my senses have oftentimes deceived me. Yeah, we can think about this. We have hallucinations. We have, if we have a fever, the world seems colder than it actually is. Optical hallucinations, dreams, of course, right? Because we can dream that we're doing something and awake to find ourselves in our bed. Or Bertrand Russell's old joke about the Duke of Devonshire, who dreamed that he was giving a speech in the House of Lords and awakened to find that he was giving a speech in the House of Lords.